Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel Armor Gaming, and welcome back to Monster Analysis. Today we're going to be analyzing Singularis. Singularis was born in the middle of the universe, and when he moved for the first time, he left a huge black hole behind. Since then, the black hole has been devouring energy, and the energy travels through the universe and empowers Singularis at all times. So here's Singularis as a child, as a teen, as an adult, and I actually like this design. It's kind of different, it's kind of abstract, I really like it. It's basically energy, right? And Singularis, one thing that's super important that people should realize is right now on Wiki, the stats that he has, the power, life, speed, stamina, you can just tell they're the buff stats right now. So at first I was a little iffy about analyzing this monster because I wanted to know the actual stats, but now that I actually do have the actual stats, I'm going to be analyzing based on that. So keep that in mind. If you're watching the video right now, the stats he has on Wiki aren't the actual stats. These are the buff stats. His real stats are actually power, 3069. That's not a really high power. That's actually one of the lowest powers for magic monsters. Actually, it's only higher than Cupid, Pandacloss, and Goldfield, so he's pretty down there. It's interesting because this monster doesn't necessarily need power, and you're going to be seeing that later on in his skill set, so don't mind too much about the lack of power. His life, 20,652. And this life is actually mediocre. It's in the middle of like all the magic monsters, so there's nothing too bad about that life. For speed, we have 3,454. And this speed is actually pretty good. It's tied with Malaire, it's tied with Violet, so it's not bad at all. It's like right in the middle of the magic monsters, so it's also pretty good. Now this monster is of course magic, therefore his weakness is nature, and his trait, he's immune to instant death. Now given the fact that he's a magic monster, and magic monsters tend to have a lot of possession skills, it kind of sucks that he doesn't have immunity to possession, because there are faster monsters than him who do of course have possession skills, meaning that you risk the chance of getting possessed. Of course you can recharge, but then you won't be able to utilize his main skill, which I'm going to be discussing later on. So yeah, that's it for his stats and trait. Let's get right into his skills. Starting off with his default and special, we have Collision and Galactic Nuclei. There's no reason to discuss these skills, so we're going to move on to his special. Event Horizon deals massive magic damage to all enemies, removes all positive status effects from their targets. So it's an AoE, 70 damage. That's a pretty strong attack, but you don't really need strong attack for this monster. Like I mentioned, his power is one of the lowest of all the magic monsters, but the fact that it removes positive effects, that's always good. You never know if a monster has double damage on them, or if a monster has double life, or some sort of buff, so it's a pretty good ultimate. Moving on to skills group 1, we have Disintegration, 35 damage, 26 stamina, 0 turn cooldown. Nothing special about that skill. We have Oscillation, deals moderate magic damage, 35 damage, 26 stamina, 0 cooldown. Again, nothing too special about these two skills. We also have Ergosphere, deals moderate special damage, which is at 40 damage. Again, nothing too special. So far on skills group 1, we haven't seen anything too special. So I'm going to head over to skills group 2. So on skills group 2, we have a skill called Collapse. Deals moderate special damage, removes all positive status effects from target, requires cooldown. Now, a 2-turn cooldown for 45 damage that removes positive effects, that's not the greatest skill, but it's an okay skill. So I'll get back to this skill because this is actually one skill you might want to be using. I'm going to go ahead and move down to Quasar, deals moderate special damage, gains haste. Haste and slow are awesome abilities if they can land. The fact that it's 45 damage, 0 turn cooldown, I do like that. I really like the 0 turn cooldown because you always have a move to use. Unfortunately, it's not magic based element, it's special damage, so even if you're facing up against a Timerion, it doesn't give you any sort of advantage. Again, considering this monster has a low power, it doesn't help too much, but again, just the chance to gain haste is really helpful, especially since you're going to be running a lot of speed runes on this monster. So this is actually one of the skills I recommend you running with Singularis. And then his final skill on skills group 2 is called Singularity. So check this move out. Removes 50% of stamina from the target, so an AoE 50% stamina drain, and it applies stamina leak. That's super awesome. So not only are they losing 50%, which is 70 stamina, they're also going to be taking a chunk of 15% from their stamina. So that's super good. And especially if you ever have the chance to use General Thetis and this monster together, that is such a deadly combo because General Thetis will just wipe out all of their stamina, and then when they recharge, you can wipe off 50% and give them stamina leak, so it's going to be really hard for the enemy to recover. So this is actually one of the highlights I really love about this monster. I know a lot of people really like Paradox, but I just really like this skill. I wish more monsters had a skill like this. Unfortunately, it deals no damage, but just the effects of this skill are really good. You definitely have to run this skill. And moving on to skills group 3, we have Catastrophe, 45 damage. I don't understand the skill. Like, why do we have a skill that deals 45 damage, is a 2-turn cooldown. When, if you look at skills group 1, we have Collapse, which is the exact same thing, but it at least removes positive effects. Like, you have no reason to run Catastrophe when you can run Collapse. And even if you didn't want to run Catastrophe, you could always just run Quasar, which is the same amount of damage, same stamina, no cooldown, and you get a chance to haste. I never understand when Social Point does this. Why do they give a skill, especially in skills group 3, that is no better than a previous skill? It makes no sense to me. So 100% you do not want to run Catastrophe. So moving down to Graviton, deals moderate special damage, may slow down target, 45 damage, 28 stamina, 0 turn cooldown. It's the exact opposite of Quasar. Instead of haste, you're trying to slow the enemy. So I'm a big fan of slow and haste. The problem with those skills the problem with those effects are that it's hard for them to actually land, but when they do land, they're really helpful. But now moving on to his final skills from skills group 3, and this is the skill that basically broke the comments. I just kept reading how overpowered this skill was, but when I saw it for myself, it's a little iffy. So let me just show you what this skill does and then explain my opinion on it. So after 4 turns, all enemies will die. Requires cooldown. Paradox. All enemies will die after 4 turns, right? And we're thinking, what the heck? How overpowered is this skill? In 4 turns, all the enemies die. That's like Metalhead's ultimate, except it's a regular skill. It only has a 4-turn cooldown, 29 stamina. Like, what the heck? It's so overpowered. But really, when you think about it, how many battles actually last 4 turns? Think about that question. Rarely do battles ever last 4 turns. That doesn't really happen much. So that's one point I want to make. The second point I want to make is, yes, it's true, this is anti-Voltic, anti-Xyla, even anti-Oros, because Oros can be pretty hard to beat with his huge life. Really anti-anyone with a lot of life runes. But the thing about him being anti-Voltic and anti-Xyla, I really want you to think about that too, because I know we're thinking like, oh yeah, they have that extra turn skill, they're just gonna, if we don't destroy them, they're gonna destroy us, right? Voltic and Xyla. But really think about that. If you have a monster that has an attack that gives burning, that's basically anti-Voltic if it lands. If you get General Dartmouth and you give him a strength rune and he uses his skill, his single hit skill that applies burning, that's going to take Voltic down because you have that initial damage, you have that added damage with the strength rune, and then he has burning, which takes away 15% of his health. So even if he hits you extra turns, that's just good for you because he's going to die. It's the same with Xyla. And I know the argument is, well, what if burning doesn't land? Well, that applies with Paradox. Keep in mind, Paradox is an AoE. The problem with AoEs is that they have a 90 accuracy as opposed to 95. So see, a regular hit would be 95 as opposed to Paradox, which is 90. So the chances of landing Paradox on a Voltic and Xyla especially, it's even less than landing like a regular hit. So yeah, it's 100% true that this is easily anti-Voltic, anti-Xyla. But when you really think about it, any monster with burning, and really any monster with even poison, if it's strong enough to deal like initially a high amount of damage, the poison can take them out, the nightmares can take them out, the burning especially can take him out. So I know when we see an attack that's like, whoa, this in 4 turns you automatically win, we're like, whoa, that's so amazing. But when you really think about it, it's not as amazing as you originally thought. The whole being anti-Xyla, anti-Voltic, like I said, anyone with burning can basically do that. Now I don't want to completely undermine the skill because obviously the cool thing is it's an AoE. Whereas in my scenario with like Dartmouth, if Dartmouth attacks Voltic and lands burning, that's anti-Voltic. This skill is anti everyone, but again, the drawback it's an AoE, so the chance of landing on everyone isn't that high. And then, you know, it's a give and take really, the way I see it. So a lot of people in the past have asked me, is this monster good? And I think that answer to that question is incredibly subjective. So I try to keep the analysis less opinionated and more just analytical. But if you want my personal opinion, I'm a little iffy on this monster. I don't hate him, but I also don't really like him because I don't see a need for him. Like I said, yeah, Paradox, 4 turns, you win. But in terms of PvP, no game lasts 4 turns. That's very rare when a game will last 4 turns. And for Team Wars, like I said, his speed isn't bad. It's in the middle. But you have monsters like Violet, you have monsters like Uru, you have monsters like Galante who can easily go before him and kind of immobilize that whole Paradox. And like I said, he's not immune to possession, so he can get possessed, so that kind of wastes a churn. Like, there's so many factors that play into it to really say how good this monster is. Now, of course, he is good. I've been hearing Adventure Map. You can use Paradox, you win in 4 turns against the bosses, so that's really good. So if you don't have Timerion and you happen to pick this monster up, you just have someone to easily win in Adventure Map now. But going back to more analysis, the skills I recommend running for him are obviously Paradox and Singularity. I really like Singularity. I honestly like Singularity more than like Paradox. So run Paradox, run Singularity. I would run Quasar. And the reason you want Quasar is because you are going to be running speed runes. so that's really going to help you out if you manage to land that haste. And then I would run either Collapse or Graviton, and that's more of a personal, whatever if you prefer trying to slow, if you prefer removing negative effects, either of those two are good. I would recommend running Collapse, because in case you ever do go up against monsters that give themselves a double life shield, if someone has double damage on them and you want to remove it, Collapse works for you. So that's my number one recommendation: Paradox, Singularity, Quasar, Collapse. But if you don't want Collapse, you could also run Graviton, or if you don't want Quasar, you could also run Graviton. But again, the reason you want Collapse is to remove any positive effects the enemy may apply to themselves, and the reason you want Quasar is because the recommended runes for this monster is 3 runes. Or I should say 3 speed runes, and the reason you want 3 speed runes is because, of course, you're going to try to start off the game with Paradox. That's the whole point. It doesn't help if you have a main deny monster and you deny the enemy team, and then it goes back to you and then you do Paradox because they already all used up a churn. It's better if you can start off the game with Paradox. So possible team combinations for the monster are really just stall monsters. So if you run General Thetis, for example, I think it's a really good monster. And even like if you were to run the Blob, if you run General Thetis and use your Stamina Devours, drain all the stamina, and then it goes to Singularis, and you do Paradox, then the enemy recharges, your third monster recharges, say it's the Blob, say it's anyone, say it's a common. He recharges, it goes back to Thetis, you recharge, it goes back to Singularis, and then you do Singularity, they lose all their stamina, they have stamina leak, and you know, you're just stalling for time. And that's really how a game would go with him as far as PvP. As far as Team Wars, that it really depends on what the other two monsters are, but it's basically the same idea. If you're relying on Paradox, the idea is to use all speedruns on this monster, use Paradox, try to land it. You hopefully have another deny monster, because you really are going to just have to stall for time and hope that Paradox just wipes them out. Hopefully the enemy doesn't have a skill that removes negative effects. I should have mentioned that. One also downfall to Paradox lasting 4 turns is if the enemy has a skill that says like removes all negative effects, like say General Ingvar removes all negative effects. So Paradox is a waste, and now you can only really rely on Singularity, because like I said, this monster has a really low power and his skills even just deal 45 damage, so him as an attacker isn't that helpful. But yeah guys, that's it for my analysis on Singularis. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I got so many requests for it, so here's the video. Make sure to post in the comments below who you want me to analyze next week, and I'll see you guys next time.